Germany. I've never been, but I hear it's a wonderful country. They're experiencing some very serious, extremely harsh conditions right now. First story I'll go to talks about Germany bracing for the sweltering temperatures. And they got those temperatures, and it's still hot over there. Then we'll move on to the climate change affecting German farmers. We'll touch on alcohol and how alcohol consumption has increased, and in the heat, German beer producers are running out of bottles to put their beer in. And finally, we'll take a look at the environmental or bacteriological effect on the heat changes in the ocean, because one thing I noticed in England, as soon as the heat rose, the plants that usually grow slowly and stay on the bottom multiplied exponentially and came to the top and made green rivers out of usually clear water. Next on Raheem Reports. DW.com reports Germany braces for sweltering temperatures in Europe-wide heatwave. The heatwave has shut down Hanover's airport, damaged roads and devastated crops. With higher temperatures expected in AC-starved Germany, experts are warning people to heed the heat and even go home early from work. Germany braced itself Wednesday for sweltering temperatures that could reach up to 36 degrees Celsius, 96.8 Fahrenheit in some places. On Tuesday, temperatures peaked at 35.9 degrees in the northern town of Lingen, with little relief overnight as temperatures in several large cities hovered around 20 degrees. It cooled down a bit last night, although cool down is a bit of an overstatement, a spokesperson for Germany's National Meteorological Service, DWD, told the news agency DPA. The DWD has issued heat warnings for most areas of Germany on Wednesday, excluding some areas in Bavaria and eastern Germany. As climate change continues to have an impact on the environment, scientists have warned that Germany's unusually hot summer could soon become the norm. Look at the cracked concrete. This beautiful concrete, paved, this tarmac. The reason I emphasize it is because I just think about the wonderful work that the Germans did on the Autobahn and how everybody just marvels at the construction of it. And now it's being torn to bits by this increased temperature. Parts of the runway at Hanover Airport buckled in the heat. Airport temporarily shut down. Hanover's airport resumed flights early on Wednesday morning after temporarily shutting down because of damage caused by the heat. Planes landing in the high temperatures damaged several areas on the tarmac, prompting the airport to halt all flights on Tuesday evening. An airport spokesman said 41 departures and 44 arrivals were affected by the delays. The heat is also causing headaches for travelers on Germany's highways. Since the high temperatures can cause concrete slabs on the roads to break, authorities have placed a speed limit of 80 kilometers per hour, 50 miles per hour, on sections of the A7 and the A81 near the southern cities of Stuttgart and Ulm. Head home early. Health and weather experts are warning people to stay hydrated and keep cool as possible in air conditioning. Most homes, offices and schools in Germany do not have air conditioning. In situations of extreme heat, students and employees are sometimes allowed to leave work and school early to cool down as much as possible at home. Andreas Matsarakis, a medical meteorologist with the DWD, urged workers to take those opportunities and the heat warnings seriously. If your employer allows flexible working hours, try starting work early in the morning and go home in the afternoon in order to spend fewer hot hours in the office, Matsarakis wrote in an article for the newspapers of the Redaktions Netzwerk Deutchland. Germany's heatwave. Shining sun and burning fields. My God, it looks like a desert surrounded by a little bit of greenery. Unusually dry. In northeastern Germany, there has been hardly any rainfall in recent months. See, I didn't know this. Thank you very much for telling me. Let me give credit where credit is due right now. Let me go to, here we go. New comment, 4 minutes, there we go. Thank you to Max Musterman. He's the one that wrote a few hours ago in response to my Raheem report on 4 minutes of rain, now back to drought UK. He says, extreme drought in Germany as well. This kind of drought needs days and weeks of constant rain to be eased. Now, when I read that, I thought he was exaggerating a little bit. But what did I just read? Unusually dry in northeastern Germany. There has been hardly any rainfall in recent months. See, this is the beautiful thing about communications technology. It allows you to see what the world is going through, or should I say the earth, because as I explained in another video, the Bible talks about the world as a nation. So the world can speak about just the world of the house of Israel, my people, the Israelites, or it can speak about the world of the Romans, which is just Rome. But when it refers to the whole earth, it's talking about the planet. So back to the story. In northeastern Germany, there has been hardly any rainfall in recent months. Not days like we've had, or a couple of weeks in England. We've been lucky, we've been blessed. Months. The country's weather service says Saxony-Anhalt received just 15 liters of rainfall per square meter, roughly a quarter of the average. Across Germany, there were just 50 liters of rainfall per square meter, half of the usual amount. Mecklenburg, West Pomerania, received more sunshine than any other German state. Now, when you think about California and you hear Sunshine State, you think about grapes and oranges and lemons and lush harvests. But if you have a sunshine state with no rain, you actually have a desert. Now let's take a look at these images. That was 1, unusually dry. 2, unpredictable weather. Wow. From harsh weather conditions and drought to flash floods. Look at this. Unpredictable weather. The little rain that fell came down very unevenly across Germany. In May, the country's weather service warned of potential forest fires in parts of Lower Saxony. Meanwhile, in southwestern Germany, some towns faced torrential rains that flooded cellars and roads, such as here in Fischbach, Rhineland, Palatinate. And any Germans want to correct me on the pronunciations, please go ahead. Let's take a look at the next one. Fire alert. The danger of forest fires is extremely high right now throughout the country. The state of Brandenburg faces the biggest threat. In recent weeks, authorities have been forced to put out more than 100 fires. Recently, 100 hectares of forest and wheat crops burned to the ground in the Oder-Spree region. Brandenburg authorities reported that 90% of fires are inadvertently caused by humans. So they're not doing it deliberately, but carelessness is allowing these fires to spread. Wow. Busy times for firefighters. I wonder if they're getting paid overtime. It took 40 firefighters 13 hours to extinguish the flames sweeping through Brandenburg's Oder-Spree region. A fire in Rostock, meanwhile, was not caused by humans but by a bird. What kind of bird is this? It's a ninja bird. Police say the animal caused an electricity cable to short circuit, which then set a nearby a bird. See, now any Germans, they probably want a cat to go and catch that bird, like Sylvester. Tweety bird set the field on fire in Sylvester. All jokes aside, a bird. Let's read that again. It took 40 firefighters 13 hours to extinguish the flames sweeping through Brandenburg's Oder-Spree region. 13 hours, dude. Some people queued to get the new iPhone for that long. And that's how long it took to put out the fire. Anyway, there's a difference. One person is saving up money. The other people are saving lives. A fire in Rostock, meanwhile, was not caused by humans but by a bird. Police say the animal caused an electricity cable to short circuit, which then set a nearby field ablaze. I just had visions of Tweety Bird getting pissed off and just ripping the electrical cablings to shreds. And Sylvester just wetting himself saying, I didn't know Tweety Bird could be this violent. Let's take a look at the next picture. Tapping into new sources. Saxony-Anhalt's firefighters, meanwhile, are so busy they needed to get creative to find new sources of water. So they headed to a nearby pool to refill their tanks. The dryness, meanwhile, not only makes fires more likely, but also poses a major threat to farmers. Yes, because now you're dealing with not just the livelihoods of the food producers, you are dealing with the preservation of your nation, because if the food producers can't produce food and people aren't growing food at home and they're running out of water, you're looking at potential riots. You're looking at prices of food going up. You see, it's amazing how one thing in society can change and affect everything else. And we're just looking at the weather. We're not looking at animals' reaction to this. We're not looking at bacteria, which we'll read about later, multiplying in the water because the heat is heating up the ocean's temperature to such a degree or two that more bacteria is produced, which then affects the people that use the water system and swim in it. Major threat to farmers. Wow. Early harvests, lower yields. The unusually dry weather has forced many farmers to harvest their crops early. The German Farmers Association has stated that even April was too warm and dry. The following months meant that wheat crops ripened much faster than expected, though insufficient rain has produced a low yield. Sudden torrential rainfall, meanwhile, made matters worse by destroying parts of the crops. So let's keep going here. Right, crop failures on the cards. Potatoes, sugarcane and corn are usually harvested in autumn. They require much more water than wheat and rapeseed. So due to the unusually dry weather, Germany's corn plants are in bad shape. The German Farmers Association president, Joachim Ruckwied, is pessimistic and fears crop failures could jeopardize the livelihoods of many farmers. That was the phone rebooting in the background and telling me I have some new messages. Great. It's always good to hear from my listeners, especially when they become clients and buy stuff that I produce. It's always nice. No water in sight. Look how parched that grass is. There are two kinds of drought. Drought in a meteorological sense refers to a drop in rainfall within 1 month below the long-term average, says Stephen Tober of the Helmholtz Center for Environmental Research. This causes a drought in the agricultural sense, meaning that there is too little water in the ground. That's a problem for wheat and meadows on the banks of River Elbe here in Dresden. Vegetation adapts to heat. Extreme dry spells can cause long-term damage to trees and recovery takes a long time, says Ingolf Kuhn of the Helmholtz Center for Environmental Research. Vegetation has a memory, so to speak, and may adapt if there are several consecutive years with little rainfall. Some German cities have now called on residents to help out in watering trees, so that someday cacti will not replace trees. Wow! Cacti as in cactus, plural, cacti as in desert. Problems on the River Rhine. It's the main river running through the entire heart of Germany. The Rhine River and its tributaries have lowered to dangerous levels, leading to restrictions in shipping. The Mannheim office of the Federal Waterway and Shipping Department confirmed that, until conditions change, ships in the Upper Rhine can only be loaded with 1,500 tons of cargo, down from their usual weight of 3,000 or more. And here's the thing, depending on the cargo, that could be up to half or more losses in profits. So it's affecting business, country and nationwide in Germany. And the author of those particular tidbits of information was Julia Vergin. Thank you, Julia. Now let's take a look. Farmers expecting €1 billion loss. The heat and lack of rainfall has Germany's agriculture sector extremely worried. The German Farmers Association is expecting a loss of €1.4 billion because of dead and dwindling crops. German beer producers, on the other hand, have seen a boom in business during the sustained hot temperatures. They're now contending with a shortage of bottles and have urged the public to return their bottles, which are reused in Germany under a deposit system. We already do that in Barbados, so we're a bit ahead of the game there. The heat has also caused temperatures in the Baltic Sea to rise, bringing an increased risk of being infected by the Vibrio bacteria, which we will look at in a second. Here we go. Swimmers warned against Baltic Sea as German heat wave approaches. With extreme heat and drought conditions drying out fields and rivers, the risk of wildfires in northern Germany is extremely high. Massive wildfires have already broken out in Sweden and Greece, where they have killed at least 74 people. Now, if you haven't seen the report that I did on that, which is almost 2.5 hours, go and watch that. It's very interesting. It goes around the world. It doesn't cover every single place, but it covers most of the planet, because I don't think I did Canada, but I read an article or two maybe about them, and they're all having trouble. Anything else? Oh yes, some recommendations for people in housing and architecture of how to combat the heat. This is interesting. How cities and people can beat the heat. Paint the town white. One easy way to combat the harsh summer sun, could be painting your roof white, an idea long embraced by Greeks. A black roof, for example, absorbs most of the sunlight that hits it, heating up the underlying home like an oven. Light-colored surfaces, on the other hand, can reflect up to 80% of the sun's rays, keeping inside temperatures cool. That also means a lower carbon footprint and energy bill. It's very clever. Simple, but clever. You see, sometimes you don't need these high-tech solutions. It's just, how can we do this? Well, let's ask NASA, then let's ask this scientist. No, how about we just paint the place white and have it reflect the sunlight? Simple, plain, straight to the point. Thank you very much. Water in the city. Bodies of water like lakes, canals and rivers can help bring down the temperature in cities, cooling the surrounding air when it evaporates. Water doesn't adjust to temperature changes quickly, and so, to an extent, can maintain a certain level of heat or coldness. Urban areas short on space don't need to have a huge lake to benefit from this cooling effect. Fountains can also help. Very clever. Add a little green. Planting trees is a simple way to create cool spaces in cities. Specifically, it's the shade they provide and the water they evaporate through their leaves that make the real difference. If planted strategically along streets or around buildings, they can significantly cool inside temperatures and combat the urban heat island effect. Now, I'm glad I read that, because I mentioned in another story regarding a hosepipe ban about the rich people in Chigwell and how somebody thought it was a good idea to cut down all those trees which add, as we've just read, a shading effect to keep the heat off the ground and afford people in the neighborhood some kind of cool space to sit down and relax, go outside, do a live stream presentation, and doubly act as windbreakers during the more blustery months when wind is pushing clouds and rain into and across the nation. And instead of blowing your house down like the really big bad wolf, it blows on trees, and the trees act as a barrier to protect the surrounding communities. Parks and gardens. According to a study by the Technical University of Munich, several small parks can better cool a city than one big one. That's because large parks lower temperatures in one specific place, while small parks, if evenly spread out, can impact a much wider area. See, this is why it's good to understand how towns and cities are built, because the way they're built is not just for fashion and to show off the architectural prowess of the architect, the skill set of the builders, but also serve as a functional city that cools, heats, stays warm in the winter, cools in the summer, because it's spaced according to certain natural and mathematical fundamentals, such as small parks can better cool a city than one big one. That's because large parks lower temperature in one specific place, while small parks, if evenly spread out, can impact a much wider area. Do the math, it makes sense. Connecting city green spaces with wind corridors can also help airflow and to reduce heat. So you have to know a little bit about how the wind moves across the area and the neighborhood, and look at weather systems, build the city according to the potential to improve living conditions. Gardens on the roof. Now, this is something I'd have never thought of. I've heard of roof gardens, but I would have never thought to include that. How cities and people can beat the heat. Gardens on the roof. If you don't want to paint your roof white, green roofs or rooftop gardens can also have a cooling impact on urban areas. The vegetation absorbs heat through the evaporation of rainwater, while at the same time insulating the building and reducing the need for air conditioning. Clever. Rooftops also make a great place to plant vegetables, from pumpkins above to carrots, and it will also, if your produce becomes abundant, help you to save money instead of continually running to these supermarkets, which may one day have to close their doors if they run out of food. Imagine that. Riots ensuing. And in the background we see that these buildings are a light color. They're not exactly white, but they're off-white, gray, light beige, and that will help because lighter colors reflect the sun as opposed to darker colors which absorb it. Spice, spice, baby. While you're building your rooftop garden, you also might want to consider planting some chili, Now, why is that, you ask? That's because spicy food, believe it or not, can keep you cool. It forces you to sweat, lowering your body temperature. That's why the Mexicans eat so many chilies in the summer. And chilies is good for the gut, I heard. It's the right type of acid that you're putting down there. Sweating through the heat. When temperature rises above 30 degrees, as it did in England, UK, it might, and the rest of the world, seem sensible to eat ice cream or drink something cold. That's not what the experts advise. Now, I must be an expert because I said that your body will force you to burn calories, which will raise your body temperature. So that's not what the experts advise, though. Just like spicy food, drinking hot tea will increase your body temperature and cause you to sweat, which in turn cools your body down. Teas as well. And the author for this particular series of little tidbits is Leonard Proske. Thank you, Leonard. Now let's move on to swimmers warned against Baltic Sea as German heat wave approaches. This is interesting because earlier I spoke about the heat not just affecting the water systems and people, but now it's affecting the bacteria within the water system. So let's take a read of that. Next on Raheem Reports. The Baltic Sea's warmer waters have brought an increased risk of the Vibrio bacteria. Health officials in the northeast of Germany have warned vulnerable people against bathing in coastal waters. Look, if you get into that water, you're vulnerable. But let's see exactly what they're talking about. German health officials have warned members of certain at-risk groups to avoid swimming in the Baltic Sea as increased water temperature poses a danger from Vibrio bacteria. The health ministry in Germany's northeastern state of Mecklenburg, Western Pomerania, warned that people living with HIV, the elderly, liver patients, and alcohol addicts are particularly prone to bacterial infection. Germany's weather service, DWD, has issued a heat warning for large parts of Germany on Monday and advised the elderly and sick people to sit in the shade, drink plenty of water, and avoid the heat. Vibrio vulnificus. Doesn't that sound like a Roman senator? And introducing Vibrio vulnificus the Great, a variant of the bacteria that causes cholera. Ain't that great? Can lead to serious illness and can even prove fatal. What are Vibrio or Vibrio bacteria? Vibrio bacteria live in certain coastal waters and are present in higher concentrations between May and October, when water temperatures are warmer, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC for short. And now that reminds me of all the students that I went to school with years ago that went on holiday and came back with flu-like symptoms. That's probably where they got the infection from and didn't even know it. They went in the ocean and the warm temperature increased the production of that particular bacteria. How does infection occur? Ooh, very good. Let's read that. If open wounds come into contact with infected seawater, Vibrio bacteria can infect the wounds. People may also become infected by eating raw or undercooked shellfish, particularly oysters. Elderly and immunosuppressed people are at particular risk of infection. Immunosuppressed. Let's get a definition of that, shall we? Let's see. Immunosuppression is a reduction of the activation or efficiency of the immune system. So immunosuppressed, just like a suppressed immune system, a weaker immune system. So those people will be particularly at risk. Okay, symptoms. When ingested, Vibrio bacteria can cause watery diarrhea, oh god, often accompanied by abdominal cramping, nausea, vomiting, fever, and chills. According to the CDC, these symptoms usually occur within 24 hours of ingestion and last about 3 days. Well, that's good, because you can see it quickly and therefore handle it and deal with it quickly. It doesn't have to go into your system and spend weeks or months and you don't know what's going on and it's affecting your performance. No, within a day you should know. Severe illness is rare and typically occurs in people with a weakened immune system. So I'm selling some kelp on my Buy Me Like Me eBay account. You need to go over right now and get yourself some kelp. It's called kelp anti-radiation kit. That's what it is. It's just some tabs with some kelp, spirulina, and chlorella, and a few other things like bee pollen. Everything that is to strengthen your blood and your immune system, I've tried to put into one packet. It's capsules, vegetarian capsules. Go and take a look at it now. I'll leave the link in the description. What happens when ocean temperatures rise? Atlantis 2.0. Oh, this will be good. Let's start, shall we? As global warming speeds up, so does the rise in sea levels. While 2004 to 2010 saw oceans rise by about 15 millimeters in total, this value doubled for 2010 to 2016. Tropical regions in the western Pacific are especially affected, threatening many of the coastal areas and low-lying islands with submersion by the end of the century. What happens when ocean temperatures rise? Breaking the ice. As ocean and atmospheric temperatures increase, glaciers and ice caps shrink in size. In 2016, the global sea ice extent was 4 million square kilometers, 1.54 million square miles, below average. Below average. Consequently, more meltwater flows into rivers and oceans, which also causes sea levels to rise. So the fish will soon be living in your front room, basically. Losing Nemo. Some ocean regions have already warmed by more than 3 degrees Celsius, upsetting marine ecosystems. 72% of demersal fish species in the northeast Atlantic Ocean have so far been affected, with warming limiting their abundance and spread. So that's why fish prices are going up, because the fishermen can't catch as many as they used to, because they're not producing as many based on the temperature variable that this individual is referring to. Species that live in tropical ocean waters, like the clownfish, are also experiencing habitat-related population decreases. Coral bleaching. Warming and acidifying water affect Nemo's navigation senses and also threaten his home, coral reefs, one of the most sensitive marine ecosystems. So that's why when people such as marine biologists are looking at changes in the ecosystem, they usually start with the coral reefs, because coral reefs will tell you, they'll give you an indicating factor as to what conditions are like for the rest of the world by studying them. A water temperature increase of as much as 3 degrees Celsius can cause the death of corals and the marine animal species that live in them. Northern parts of Great Barrier Reef have seen coral mortality rates of 50%. Wow. So these creatures that feed on the coral will have to either move, go to deeper parts of the ocean, adapt, or die. Just like if your town becomes a desert and you're not prepared to live in sand, you have to move or die. Stormy weather. With increased ocean heat, extremely strong tropical storms are set to occur much more frequently. That's because there's more humidity in the atmosphere. One of these massive storms was Hurricane Matthew, which hit Haiti in October 2016. The Haitian government put the official death toll at 546, and the hurricane also caused $15 billion, 13.8 billion euros in economic losses on the island nation and in the US, Cuba, and the Bahamas. Finally, heads or tails. There is a strong correlation between atmospheric wind patterns and ocean temperatures, meaning warming waters may also cause the jet stream to get stronger. This could affect airplane travel due to intensified head and tail winds. On the upside, this means that some flights may be much faster as you get thrown around at high altitude. On the downside, other flights may take longer and could experience more turbulence. That's very good. And that credit for that, author Jessie May Franken. Thank you, Jessie. Oh, hydroponics. What are we looking at now? Climate change already affecting German farmers. Next, that's on Raheem Reports. In Germany, some like it hot. This summer's unusually hot. Sunny weather, that is. For many farmers, the prolonged heat means smaller harvests and diminished food reserves for their livestock. Will food prices soar? I think they will. Let's find out. What we are experiencing this summer is climate change in action, says Gerald Dom, the deputy chairman of the German Farmers Association. He says the lack of rain in Germany will mean a wheat harvest of just 41 million tons. This would be 4.5 tons less than last year's already sub-average harvest of 45.5 million tons. Over the past 5 years, the average harvest has yielded 47.9 tons of wheat. What? The average harvest, okay, so it's gone down significantly. According to Dome, German farmers are extremely concerned, including those who farm livestock. He said grass and maize used to feed animals was already running low, and some unripe wheat had to be cut down in certain parts of Germany. And my idea, which is not a new idea, and it's an idea that's worked in the past, is grow hemp. It's a very hardy crop, extremely easy to grow and harvest. Use that to feed them, and it's a lot healthier because you can grow it yourself on your own land. You don't have to pay any subsidies, meaning you can basically grow it for free, especially if you grow it hydroponically. We'll be looking at hydroponics a little later on, and the animals will love it because it's got those omega fatty acids in it that the only other place you can get that from, I've heard already, is fish. And as the fish population declines, as I read earlier, because of the increase in water temperature, you'll need to come further inland to find other food sources. And hemp, the hemp crop, because it's so easy to grow and yields magnificent results and crop tonnages, you can feed your animals and have another crop to become a new income source. It's brilliant. According to Dome, German farmers are extremely concerned, including those who farm livestock. He said grass and maize used to feed animals was already running low, and some unripe wheat had to be cut down in certain parts of Germany because it would rotten and infect other crops. It's a damn shame. Oh, this beautiful. What are these? These look like peaches. Bountiful. Though many crops have withered, orchard harvests have been bountiful. Northern and eastern Germany received considerable sunshine in spring and summer this year, which caused drought-related damages. Similarly, in the southeastern state of Baden-Württemberg, drought destroyed numerous crops, but the weather varied considerably throughout the country. Some farms reported droughts, while farmers merely 2 kilometers away said they were struggling with the effects of extreme rainfall, Dom explains. While wheat farmers have taken a hit, German fruit farmers are doing well. They are reaping a substantial, albeit early, harvest. Some have even begun harvesting their fruit as early as their Mediterranean peers. April and May were the hottest months since weather records began. What does this mean for consumer prices? Dom is not worried, but admits that a drop in agricultural products drives up prices. Of course you're not worried, because you got money. You can pay for it. What about other people? But wheat prices have little impact on the cost of bread, he says. It changes only by a few cents. A few cents that some may not have. In terms of availability, Dom says consumers need not worry, because international trade will balance things out. There are different kinds of harvest situations across Europe despite the hot summer. International trade. They're having arguments about international trade right now. That's what the Brexit thing is all about, right? Cows have little to graze upon in this drought-stricken field in the German state of Saxony. And I was reading earlier in another report about how cattle and livestock had to be slaughtered because they didn't have anything to feed them. You see, hemp would have come in handy. German state considering financial assistance. Nina Wettern of Germany's Ministry for Environment, Nature Conservation and Nuclear Safety, BMU, argues farmers need to take action now. We need to assist the agricultural sector to adapt to climate change. She says that seeking the greatest possible harvest at all costs is untenable. EU funding that supports large-scale farms does little to help, she adds. But Wettern... wait. Did she just contradict the other guy? EU funding that supports large-scale farms does little to help. And he was talking about international trade, right? International trade will balance things out. And she's basically saying EU, which is international, the European Union, funding that supports large-scale farms does little to help. Or large-scale farms that yield large products does little to help. See? Keep it small, just like the earlier example. See, one thing leads to the next. What was the earlier example that I read out? The earlier example I read was about small parks, not one big park, but several small parks to keep the whole town cool, not just a particular neighborhood, which would be very elitist, because that big park would be paid for in rich neighborhoods, whereas the smaller parks, we're not going to build them, you're poor, you can have a tree. No, the small parks make more sense nationwide because they all need a water system to keep the trees going. They all need a small, very small little lake which will keep the surrounding neighborhood slightly cooler as the water evaporates into the atmosphere. So that example is good all across the board. So you probably start seeing smaller farms from this point forward, if the idea catches and farmers that want to stay in business take it upon themselves to insist they get funded for that or do it themselves. Let's take a look. Where was I? But Wettern acknowledges that farmers are under immense pressure. Apart from dealing with the capricious weather, they have to meet environmental standards like the new fertilizer law. In general, the government offers farmers help when it comes to installing better cooling systems, choosing new methods of cultivation, and selecting crops more suited to climate change. Oh, so hemp should be on the menu, Wettern says. Well, I said that, but she said suited to climate change. But none of this will mollify farmers who are already facing major financial losses due to the unusually hot weather. Dom has now called for these farmers to be granted tax relief. The German Farmers Association has also joined forces with insurers to develop schemes to provide financial protection beyond damages incurred through hail. Yeah, the hail will just F up your stuff, man. Batter it like a pimp. In 1 month, the BMU plans to meet representatives from Germany's federal states to assess the situation. Whether financial help will be granted will be decided in August, when the harvest report is published, the BMU said. See, these farmers have to think beyond government assistance, because if you become dependent on a handout, you will never actually control your own destiny. Feeding the world of the future. Is hydroponics the answer? I believe it is, because my cousins in the Caribbean are already doing that. because it's a water planet. They're surrounded by water. They're making use of the water and the water systems. And the good thing about hydroponics, something that I've studied, is that it grows crops 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times faster and yields 10 to 15 times more produce in the same space. Isn't that wonderful? Because you don't have those bastard aphids attacking your crops. You don't need fertilizer because you're indoors. There's little to no parasites attacking the plants. You can control exactly the nutrient dosage that the specific crops need. It's brilliant. I'm not doing it yet because I'm working on other things, but when I do, it should be on Raheem Remedy, which will talk about growing herbs, medicinal herbs, and plants for consumption that keep you healthy and burn fat, among other things, give you energy. Tackling food insecurity with hydroponics. The challenge of feeding a planet that's set to have 3 billion more people on it by 2050, made even more acute by climate change as some parts of the planet become wetter while others drier, means the pressure is on to find ways to feed the planet. So farming has to become more productive and new areas to grow, especially in dry climates, must be found. One potential solution: hydroponics. Growing plants in the air. Look at that beautiful crop. Farming with little space and producing higher crop yields. Hydroponic fits the bill. Though it may sound like something out of Star Trek, it's actually been around since the Aztecs. They built floating farms. See, when they say things like Aztecs and Mayans, you never actually connect the dots to them being Israelites in that part of the planet that spoke Paleo-Hebrew and taught the other natives of other nations how to do this. They built floating farms around the city of Tenochtitlan. Okay, Tenochtitlan. I'm not going to spend all day pronouncing it. You heard it. Hydroponics essentially means growing plants without soil, and instead using a nutrient-rich solution to supply them with water and minerals. Boosting yields. With hydroponics, plants, usually supported by soil, are propped up artificially instead, and a nutrient solution is applied to the suspended roots using a number of different methods, including spraying them with a solution mist. Together with artificial lights, heaters, and other equipment, the nutrient solutions help plants develop faster, produce larger yields, and grow all year round. This is like a godsend. Wonderful. Like the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. The only thing bad about that was Babylon itself, but the food was great. Efficient hydroponics. Look how pretty they are. See, what's attacking them? Nothing. They're stronger. They grow faster. Hydroponics can recycle water, meaning it could use as little as 10% of the water a conventional farm uses, making it an option in arid environments. See, Colonel Gaddafi did that for the Libyan people by irrigating water from different parts of Africa and bringing it into Libya and turning some parts of the desert into an oasis. And the closed system means nutrients don't escape, cutting fertilizer down to as much as a quarter of what a conventional farm would use. Also, almost no pesticide is needed, since soil pests aren't an issue for plants grown without soil. And that's something that the Bible speaks about when the earth was formed and the creepy crawling things therein, which are needed to keep turning the earth over so it doesn't become stagnant. Movement and life must have movement. So you have the worms, you have the beetles, you have all different types of insects, and these are the insects that will eat the heck out of your plants. So you need something to shift them away. Now there are other ways to control pests, but we're not going to look at that right now. We're looking at the wonderment of hydroponics. Planting vertically. And why are we looking at hydroponics, listener? Because if you've been paying attention, we are talking specifically about Germany and the arid conditions in response to one of my dear listeners who talked about Germany not having any rain for quite a long time. And then when I went and did the research, it hasn't rained over there for months. In some places it's flooded, in most places it's like a desert. So the reason we're looking at hydroponics then is to look at alternative solutions for growing populations and different ways of growing food. When growing sideways isn't an option, try growing upwards. Like a book that I bought recently. Oh, that's it. Let me just reach for it. There we go. The Vertical Farm, Feeding the World in the 21st Century. Forward by Majora Carter MacArthur Genius Fellow. Picador. A library journal. Best book of... Oh, it was the best book of 2010. The world-changing innovation whose time has come. This visionary book provides a blueprint for securing... I'm just reading off the back. The world's food supply. And at the same time, solving one of the greatest environmental crises facing us today. Let me read this. Imagine a world where every city has its own local food source, grown in the safest way possible, where no drop of water or particle of light is wasted, and where a simple elevator ride can transport you to nature's grocery store. Imagine the world of the vertical farm. When Columbia professor Dixon Despomier set out to solve America's food, water, and energy crisis, he didn't just think big, he thought up. In The Vertical Farm, he passionately explains the incredible impact of urban agriculture and how it will change the face of this planet for future generations. With this groundbreaking book, Despomier has quickly become the central figure in what could be a worldwide revolution. And that was written by Scientific American. Now, the reason I brought this book is because I'm interested in saving money on food. The more money you save in your house, the more money and financial power you have to make decisions every year, year on year. And also, I watched a little news clip of somebody who decided to do vertical farming and turned it into a multi-million-pound business growing vegetables for restaurants all across London in an underground World War II bunker. Underground, no sunlight, artificial light. The food is more tasty than the food grown above ground because they can control everything: nutrients, light, heat, cool, and very little pests. It's beautiful. Right, let's get back to this story. Let's put the book away. Hydroponic growing trays can be piled on top of one another, and plants can be grown more closely next to each than in the soil, making it very efficient in terms of space. As for what kind of space they can grow in, the sky is the limit. With no need for scarce farmland, one possibility could be to have hydroponic farms in skyscrapers. The downsides of hydroponics. Running a hydroponic farm can be complex, energy intensive, and expensive. Not if you have alternate energy devices such as solar panels, ground potential, magnet motors, diesel generators. Plants require many essential nutrients, and the farm needs a large amount of equipment, heat, and light, supplied for free by the sun in conventional farms, have to be provided artificially and paid for. And power failures could mean whole crops are destroyed if they go too long without water and light. Hydroponics on the rise. Hydroponics can theoretically be used to grow any crop, although the technique lends itself best to plants such as cucumbers, salad greens, tomatoes, peppers, and herbs. I'm glad they said herbs, because herbs can heal your nation and give you nice flavored teas to cleanse the blood, given which you can buy from me on Buy Me Like Me via eBay, link in the description. Given its long history, hydroponics still isn't widely used, but that looks set to change. The global hydroponic farming industry was estimated to be worth $21.2 billion US in 2016. That's forecast to grow by 7% each year. And the author, Melanie Hall. Thank you, Melanie. Now let's move on. German beer producers running out of bottles. Our final section in this trip around Germany, as the Germans would say, the fatherland. Next on Raheem Reports. With the summer heat leading to increased beer consumption, some breweries in Germany complain about lacking enough bottles and crates. Beer packaging, it seems, is a recurrent long-term problem for the industry. The Fiege brewery in the western German city of Bochum has a problem. Although business is booming in this hot World Cup summer, it's struggling to find enough bottles to put its beer in, so Fiege has launched an urgent appeal to consumers via Facebook. Here we are on their Facebook page. The translation reads, "Great weather and great beer equals much thirsty." The hook: although we regularly sold new empties, the bottles are closed in our bottling. Therefore, before you go to summer vacation, please quickly bring your Mortis Fiege empties to the drinks dealer, according to the motto, first pledge, then holidays. While you're in the sun, we'll make the bottles full. Big Mortis Fiege word. Okay. So that's their page if you're interested. Mortis Fiege, 1878. Nice page. Reusable beer bottles carry a deposit of 8 to 15 cents, or 9 to 18 cents in US money, in Germany. But that's not always enough to motivate people to lug empties back to stores when the mercury rises, and they could be, among other things, drinking beer. The summer heat has Germans hitting beer gardens, and beer sales are going through the roof. The problem is especially acute for independent, regional, family-run breweries like Fiege. A brewery spokesperson told Deutchland that whereas Fiege normally bottles 100,000 to 120,000 beers a day, this summer that figure is up to 150 to 160,000. That's 50,000 to 40 to 50,000 more than they usually do. Fiege isn't alone in having this problem, which comes hot on the heels, of a shortage of carbon dioxide. So I think that's where they get the bubbles from. They put carbon dioxide into the beer, or is it because they use that to ferment the beer? Let's quickly take a look at that. Beer food shortage looms due to Europe-wide carbon dioxide scarcity. The shortage of industrial CO2, carbon dioxide, the gas that puts the fizz into beer and soda, that's it, has left European beverage producers on edge. So if I wanted to bottle my own sodas, and instead of making them still, make them fizzy, I would need a CO2, a food grade CO2 beer canister, CO2 carbon dioxide canister. Okay, it's interesting. You see, when you read, you learn more. It's good. This issue is dramatic through the industry, the publisher of a leading German drinks industry magazine told DPA news agency. The German Brewers Association also says that the scarcity of containers is especially pronounced this summer, and complicating the situation is the nature of beer packaging in Germany, which is a science unto itself. Beer bottles come in a wide range of shapes and sizes. 2 billion in circulation, but not always the right shape. There are an estimated 2 billion reusable beer bottles in circulation among Germany's 82.6 million people, with the containers being refilled on average 36 times. That may sound like enough to meet demand, but not every brewery uses the same sort of bottle. Bottles in Germany vary from dumpies, also called steinies, to Vichys to long necks. Some breweries personalize bottles by having their name embossed on the glass, and there are both Euro and NRW 500ml bottles, the latter named after Germany's most populous state, North Rhine-Westphalia, or NRW for short, where Fij is located. But Fij uses a bottle with a swing top and porcelain cork. When opened, the cork produces a characteristic plop, like sound, so satisfying to many a beer lover. But the bottle is more expensive to keep in circulation and can only be refilled 30 times. Cans, widely used in the US and the UK, are rightly or wrongly looked down upon for being unsexy and environmentally unfriendly. Well, not if they're recyclable. In Germany, it's mostly glass or nothing. Now, glass is definitely recyclable. But breweries can't just call up bottle makers and order more new ones. Plop top bottles require extra care and attention to reuse. Glass bottles are produced seasonally, the Fij spokesperson said, and orders have to be placed a year in advance. Now, that's a good business model. Placing your orders a year in advance guarantees that we're going to have business and fulfill those orders. If we're the bottle manufacturer, we're guaranteed money. It's like the orders come in and then next year we make the orders to order. It's brilliant. With breweries having no way of knowing what the next summer's weather and hence consumption will be like. Help is on the way. Although the supply of beer bottles is particularly tight this summer, this is by no means the first time shortages have been felt in Germany. Yeah, World War I, World War II. In the summer of 2012, for instance, Munich's famous Hofbrau sold full bottles of beer only to people who brought back empty ones. Oh, if you're a beer lover, those beer bottles became gold and silver. The smaller the brewer, the more acute the problem can be. Some craft breweries don't charge deposit for bottles at all because they have no capacity to store empties if they were returned. Instead, customers are encouraged to put bottles in recycling bins or take them back to beverage shops. Massive corporate breweries like Wattsteiner and Beck's have the leverage and capacities to avoid bottle shortage problems. But size-wise, Fij is in the middle of these two poles and has had to be creative. The brewery says the response to its Facebook call for empties has been overwhelming, with fans of the beer bringing in carloads of bottles and beer crates. One woman even wrote in from Guatemala to say that she had a bottle, and several users responded with pictures of returnables and pledges that help is on the way. Now that's patriotism. If nothing else, for Fij, the beer bottle crisis of summer 2018 has turned out to be pretty good publicity. A brewery in Bochum just asked its customers for help. They should bring back their empty beer bottles before they go on their vacation. Although the deposit on bottles is between 8 and 15 cents each, not enough customers return their recyclable empties. And that brings this report to a close. Really? Sport for choice. You can always have a beer. Traditional festivals are a must. Football and beer, a winning combination. Beer can be bought around the clock. The corner pub, a temple of German beer. Beer gardens, fun in the sun. Bavaria, cradle of the beer purity law. Craft beer, modern brewing techniques. How it's done, beer brewing seminars. And finally, once in the right glass. Cheers. If you like beer, you've just had a taste, pun intended, of beer heaven. Munich's largest. It's not spring without a beer garden. First official beer garden, 1812. Chinese Tower, one of Bavaria's most famous beer gardens, has a Chinese flair. Located in the English Garden, there is room for 7,000 beer drinkers at the Chinese Tower, making it the second largest beer garden in the city. Here, tourists and locals like to raise their 1 meter glasses in a multicultural atmosphere. Multicultural. Okay, I only see one culture there, but let's continue. Beer garden revolution. That's not a bad thing. Monoculture, or stronger. Beer garden revolution. Holy brew. That's beautiful. Look at that. Greenery. That heat wave almost completely destroyed the greenery, and I think they're still having a drought in Germany. Let me know below the video what's going on over there. Send in images. I'll put them in the next news report. It's good. It's good for business, communication, relationships. Send your videos and your stories. World's oldest Abbey beer. Beyond Bavaria. And finally, theatre with your beer. So beer is actually more than just part of a culture. It is culture itself. And I do believe Israelites showed the Egyptians how to brew beer. Because we made wine. So we know a thing or two about alcohol. And my parents used to brew beer and make wine in the basement that we had. See, I need a house with a basement. It's cooler. We would have had no problems just sleeping on the ground. Haha. As long as it's on high ground, because I'm not trying to get flooded while I sleep. So let me know what you think in the comments. It's always good to see comments and responses. It shows me that you're interested and you have no problem with interacting. I don't mind talking to you at all. Now, is there anything else? Oh yeah, share this story with as many people and places as you possibly can. Share it. Just click the share link, send it to your Facebook page, send it to your friends, send it to WhatsApp, send it to a news center, send it everywhere. And remember, free news, baby. Real news, baby.